I stood alone at my wife's funeral while my son Derek and his wife Courtney whispered in the back corner, checking their phones instead of grieving. Margaret's casket sat surrounded by white roses, and I held her final letter in my jacket pocket, unopened. They barely spoke to me during the service. I felt utterly alone. The next morning, Derek and Courtney arrived at my door with lawyers, business cards in hand, demanding to discuss Margaret's $40 million estate immediately. They didn't even pretend to mourn. The morning sun barely cleared the horizon when I heard the aggressive knocking. I had not slept. How could I? Margaret was gone. 41 years of marriage, ended by pancreatic cancer that ravaged her body in 8 brutal months. I shuffled to the door in my robe, eyes swollen from crying, and found Derek and Courtney standing on my porch looking fresh and alert, like they were about to close a business deal. Derek did not embrace me. He did not ask how I was holding up. He walked past me into the living room, Courtney following with a leather briefcase that looked expensive and new. They sat on the couch where Margaret used to read her mystery novels, and the sight of them there made my stomach turn. "Dad, we need to talk about the estate," Derek said, pulling out a folder thick with papers. His voice was cold, businesslike. This was my son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the teenager I stayed up late helping with college applications. Now he looked at me like I was an obstacle to remove. Courtney opened her briefcase and spread documents across the coffee table. Spreadsheets, property listings, stock portfolios. She had organized everything with colored tabs and highlighted sections. "Margaret's assets are substantial," she said. "Not your wife or mom, just Margaret." Like she was discussing a stranger. "We've identified approximately $40 million in real estate investments, stock holdings, and business assets from her bakery empire." I stared at the papers, unable to process what was happening. "How do you have all this information?" Derek leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Dad, I've been tracking Mom's finances for 2 years. Someone had to pay attention to these things. You're just a retired high school English teacher. You don't understand wealth management or estate planning." The condescension in his voice stung worse than the words themselves. I had taught for 37 years, shaped hundreds of young minds, helped kids discover their potential. Margaret always said my work mattered more than money, but Derek made it sound like I had wasted my life on something trivial. Courtney pulled out another document, this one with sticky notes marking specific paragraphs. "We need you to sign power of attorney immediately. The estate needs active management. Properties require oversight. Investment portfolios need rebalancing. Business decisions cannot wait. Your mother died yesterday," I said quietly. "We buried her 3 hours ago, which is exactly why we need to act fast." Derek snapped. "Real estate markets fluctuate. Stock values change daily. Every day we wait costs money. Mom would want her assets protected." I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. When had this happened? When had he become so cold? "Your mother built that company from a single bakery. She worked 16-hour days, learned business management at community college while working full-time, took risks when everyone said she would fail. She did not do that so you could swoop in the day after her funeral demanding control." Courtney's expression hardened. "With all due respect, Irvin, Margaret built that fortune. You were along for the ride. You contributed your teacher's salary while she built an empire. The business assets, the investment properties, the stock portfolio, that was her work, not yours." The words hit like physical blows, along for the ride, as if 41 years of partnership meant nothing, as if the nights I held Margaret when business deals fell through, the meals I cooked when she worked late, the belief I had in her when no one else did, as if none of that mattered. Derek stood up, straightening his expensive suit. "We've already picked out a larger house in Westchester. The down payment would come from the estate, and Amber needs private school tuition. The best prep school in the area costs $60,000 a year. Mom would want her granddaughter to have opportunities. Amber, my granddaughter. I had not seen her in 5 years, not since she turned 16. Derek always had excuses why she could not visit. Now I understood he had been keeping her away deliberately. "You have 24 hours to think clearly about this," Courtney said, gathering the papers with brisk efficiency. "We understand you're grieving, but grief doesn't pay bills or manage assets. Sign the power of attorney, and we'll handle everything. You can stay in this house, keep your routines. We're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to protect the family's financial future." They left without another word, closing the door firmly behind them. I sat in the sudden silence, surrounded by the home Margaret and I had built together. Every piece of furniture held memories. The armchair where she sat grating recipes. The bookshelf I built for her growing collection of business journals. The kitchen where we danced on Saturday mornings while making pancakes. My hands shook as I pulled the envelope from my pocket. Margaret's handwriting on the front, shaky from the medication but still distinctly hers. I had been too afraid to open it at the funeral, not ready for the finality of her last words, but Derek's visit changed something in me. I carefully unsealed the envelope and unfolded the letter. "My dearest Irvin, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I need you to know 3 things. First, Derek has been lying to us. Second, the money isn't what it seems. Third, go to my safety deposit box at First National Bank, box 473. The key is in my jewelry box behind the photo of our wedding day. Trust only yourself now. All my love, Margaret." I read it 3 times, trying to understand. Derek lying about what? What did she mean the money was not what it seemed? Margaret had always been straightforward about finances. We had a comfortable life, not extravagant but secure. I knew about her business success, the bakery chain she sold for a substantial profit, the smart investments she made. But $40 million, that number shocked me. I thought we had maybe 10 million, enough to live comfortably in retirement. I went to our bedroom, to Margaret's jewelry box on the dresser. Behind our wedding photo, tucked into a small velvet pouch, I found a brass key with a number etched into it. 473. Sleep would not come that night. I lay in our bed, Margaret's side cold and empty, and wondered what she had discovered about our son. What lies had he told? And why did she want me to go to that safety deposit box? First National Bank opened at 9 in the morning. I was there at 8:45, waiting in my car, the brass key clutched in my hand. The bank manager, Helen, a woman in her 50s who had known Margaret through various business dealings, saw me enter and immediately came over. "Irvin, I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, taking my hands in hers. Margaret was an incredible woman. She helped my daughter get a small business loan when no one else would take a chance on her. "Thank you, Helen. I need to access a safety deposit box. Number 473. Something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe concern. "Of course. Follow me." She led me to the vault, verified my identification, and used her master key along with Margaret's key to open the long metal box. It was heavier than I expected. Helen must have sensed my distress because she said, "There's a private room if you need privacy." I nodded, unable to speak. She helped me carry the box to a small, windowless room with a table and chair, then quietly closed the door behind her. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside was a thick manila folder, a USB drive, and a leather-bound journal. I opened the folder first and felt the world tilt. Bank statements, dozens of them, with transactions highlighted in yellow. Unauthorized transfers from Margaret's accounts. $50,000 here, $75,000 there, $120,000 in another transaction. The dates went back 3 years. I added the numbers in my head. $875,000, stolen in increments designed not to trigger immediate alerts. The signatures on the withdrawal forms looked like Margaret's, but something about them seemed wrong. The slant was too sharp, the loops too precise. Forgeries. Next came a private investigator's report, dated 6 months before Margaret's death. The investigator, a man named Thomas Chen. No, I cannot use that name. A man named Thomas Bradford had documented meetings between Derek and Margaret's financial advisor, Stuart. Photos showed them at restaurants, in parking garages, looking around nervously like men with secrets. Email printouts captured their conspiracy. One email from Derek to Stuart read, "Mom's getting suspicious about the transfers. We need to slow down for a few months. But once she's gone, you'll get your 20%. Just keep the accounts accessible." Stuart's response, "Your mother is sharper than you think. I suggest we prepare for the possibility she's already figured it out. Have you considered what happens if she changes her will?" Derek's reply, "She won't. She loves Irvin too much to leave him with nothing, and she still believes in the son she raised. We just need to be patient." I felt physically sick. This was not grief anymore. This was betrayal so profound it seemed to hollow out my chest. Margaret's journal came next. Her handwriting grew shakier as the entries progressed, tracking her physical decline and her growing suspicions. March 14th. Noticed another $50,000 missing from the investment account. Confronted Derek directly. He claimed it was a computer error. That Stuart was looking into it. I don't believe him anymore. My own son is lying to my face. April 2nd. Hired Thomas Bradford, a private investigator. I need proof before I accuse my own son of theft. Part of me still hopes I'm wrong, that there's an explanation. But the pattern is too clear. Someone is systematically draining my accounts. May 18th. The cancer is spreading faster than the doctors predicted. I'm running out of time. Must protect Irvin. He doesn't understand money the way I do, and Derek will take advantage of that. I need a plan. June 29th. Met with Stuart today without telling Derek. Confronted him with evidence. He broke down, admitted everything. Derek promised him millions if he helped access my accounts early. Stuart is weak, but not evil. Hez terrified of Derek. I'm terrified of what my son has become. The entries ended 2 weeks before Margaret died. Her final words, "Everything is in place. Irvin will know what to do. I built something beautiful from nothing. I will not let thieves destroy it, even if one thief is my son." I had to stop reading. The grief overwhelmed me, not just for Margaret's death, but for the weight she carried alone in her final months. She protected me from this knowledge while fighting cancer, while her own son robbed her. The USB drive felt heavy in my hand. Helen had left a laptop in the room for situations like this. I plugged in the drive and clicked the only file folder. For Irvin. Margaret's face filled the screen. She sat in her study at home, the room where she planned her business strategies and read her business journals. The recording was dated 3 weeks before her death. She looked so weak, the chemotherapy having stolen her hair and much of her weight. But her eyes still held that fierce intelligence I fell in love with. "Irvin, my darling," she began, and my eyes filled with tears hearing her voice again. "If you're watching this, you've found the evidence. You know what Derek has done. I'm so sorry you have to learn this way. I wanted to protect you from this pain, but I couldn't shield you forever." She paused, gathering strength. "I need you to understand what happened. Derek has been stealing from me for 3 years. He has gambling debts I only recently discovered. Courtney has shopping addictions that have bankrupted them twice. They're drowning financially, and instead of asking for help, they decided to steal their inheritance early." Margaret leaned closer to the camera. "But here is what Derek doesn't know. The $40 million he thinks exists. It's a trap. I've spent the last 6 months moving the real assets into a complex trust structure that only you can access. The properties Derek knows about are mortgaged to their full value. The stock portfolio has tracking is filled with shell company stocks worth almost nothing. The business assets are tied up in legal structures that will take years to untangle without proper authorization." She smiled, just slightly. "The real assets, worth approximately $63 million, are held in a trust called the Irvin and Margaret Foundation for Family Literacy. Only you can access them. And only after proving Derek's theft to the trust's legal board. I've already filed a police report, but I asked them to wait until after my death to investigate. I didn't want to spend my final days testifying against my son." The video continued for another 10 minutes. Margaret explained her entire strategy, how she created fake financial portfolios, how she moved real assets into protected structures, how she documented every theft. She had built a comprehensive legal case against Derek while dying of cancer. Her final words on the video: "I built my fortune from nothing, starting with a single bakery and a dream. I thought I was building a legacy for our family. Instead, I created opportunity for monsters to reveal themselves. Irvin, you are the only person who ever believed in me unconditionally. You taught me to read when I was too ashamed to admit I couldn't. You gave me the foundation for everything I became. Now I'm giving you the foundation to help others the way you helped me. Use it well. Love, always. Margaret." The screen went black. I sat in that small room and wept. For Margaret's strength, for Derek's betrayal, for the decades of love reduced to legal documents and surveillance footage, for the son I thought I knew, who had become a stranger capable of stealing from his dying mother. Helen knocked softly on the door. "Irvin, are you all right? You've been in here for over 2 hours." I wiped my eyes and opened the door. "Helen, I need copies of everything in this box. Multiple copies. And I need the name of a good attorney who specializes in estate law and fraud cases." She nodded, understanding without needing explanation. "I'll make the copies personally. And my brother-in-law, Jackson, is one of the best estate attorneys in the state. I'll call him right now." "One more thing," I said. "Margaret mentioned she filed a police report before she died. Do you know anything about that?" Helen's expression grew serious. "Detective Sarah Brennan came by about 3 weeks ago. She and Margaret met privately in this same room. I don't know what they discussed, but Margaret seemed relieved afterward, like she had set something important in motion." I thanked Helen and waited while she made copies. By noon, I had 3 complete sets of evidence. One for me, one for the attorney, one for Detective Brennan. The original documents went back into the safety deposit box. As I drove home, I thought about Derek showing up yesterday with his demands and timelines. He thought he was dealing with a grieving old man who would simply sign whatever papers were put in front of him. He had no idea Margaret had spent her final months building an intricate trap, using his greed against him. But knowing what I knew now did not make the pain less. Derek was still my son. I still remembered teaching him to throw a baseball, helping him with algebra homework, watching him graduate college with pride. That person seemed to have disappeared, replaced by someone I did not recognize. When I got home, I called the number Helen gave me. Jackson answered on the second ring, and his voice was kind but professional. "Helen told me about your situation. I'm so sorry for your loss. Can you come to my office this afternoon? We have a lot to discuss." "I'll be there at 2, I said. I had 3 hours before the meeting. I spent them reading through Margaret's journal again, understanding the full scope of her final battle. She fought cancer and betrayal simultaneously, and she won both fights by planning ahead, by being smarter than the people who underestimated her. In her last entry, she wrote, "Irvin doesn't know his own strength. He thinks he's just a teacher, as if teaching is somehow less important than business. But he changed my life completely by teaching me to read. He gave me dignity and possibility. Now I need him to be strong one more time. He needs to fight for what's right, even when what's right means standing against our son. I believe in him." I set the journal down and looked around our home. Margaret's presence was everywhere, her reading glasses on the side table, her favorite blanket draped over the couch, her coffee mug still in the sink from the morning before she went into hospice. I had been a teacher for 37 years. I believed in redemption, in the possibility that people could change. But I also believed in accountability, in consequences for choices. Derek made his choices. Now he would face the consequences Margaret had carefully prepared. Jackson's office was downtown in a building that smelled of leather and old books. He was in his early 60s, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He spent 2 hours reviewing the evidence I brought, occasionally making notes, sometimes shaking his head in disbelief. "This is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases I've ever seen," he finally said. "Margaret documented everything perfectly. The forged signatures alone are enough for criminal charges. Add the electronic trail, the witness testimony from Stewart, the private investigator's work, and you have an airtight case. What happens now?" I asked. "Now we wait for Derek to make his next move. He gave you 24 hours. That deadline is in. He checked his watch. 3 hours. Hell, come back expecting you to sign the power of attorney. Instead, you're going to tell him you know everything. Want that give him time to destroy evidence or flee. Jackson smiled grimly. Margaret thought of that too. Detective Brennan has been monitoring Derek's accounts and movements for 3 weeks. If he tries to run or move money, they'll arrest him immediately. Your confrontation today will likely trigger his arrest within 48 hours. I felt sick at the thought. Confronting Derek meant crossing a line we could never uncross. But Margaret had already crossed it for us by documenting his crimes. I drove home with Jackson's words echoing in my mind. When I pulled into my driveway, Derek's black Mercedes was already parked on the street. He and Courtney sat on my porch, looking annoyed at having to wait. Derek stood as I approached. "You're late, Dad. We've been here 20 minutes. I was meeting with my attorney," I said, unlocking the door. Courtney's expression shifted slightly. Concern, maybe fear, but Derek just laughed. "Attorney? Dad, you don't need an attorney. We're family. This is a family matter." Inside, they had brought 2 men in suits. Lawyers, I assumed. Everyone settled in the living room. One lawyer opened his briefcase and pulled out documents. "Mr. Thompson, we've prepared the power of attorney paperwork. It's very straightforward. You sign here and here. We get these notarized, and the estate management can proceed smoothly." I looked at the papers but did not reach for them. "Before I sign anything, I have a question for Derek." "Sure, Dad." "What is it?" "I went to First National Bank this morning. I opened your mother's safety deposit box. Box 473. Do you know what I found there?" The color drained from Derek's face. Courtney's hand gripped his arm so tightly her knuckles went white. "I don't know what you're talking about," Derek said, but his voice wavered. I pulled out the folder from my bag and placed it on the coffee table. I opened it to the bank statements, the highlighted transfers, the forged signatures. "I found evidence that you've been stealing from your mother for 3 years, $875,000 in total. I found emails between you and Stewart planning to split millions after Margaret died. I found your mother's journal, where she wrote about discovering your betrayal while she was dying of cancer." One of Derek's lawyers immediately stood up. "I need to speak with my client privately. This has become a criminal matter." "Sit down," Derek said through gritted teeth. The lawyer hesitated, then sat. Courtney tried to salvage the situation. "Irvin, whatever you think you found, you're misunderstanding. Derek had access to those accounts because Margaret gave him access. She wanted him involved in managing her finances. Then why did she hire a private investigator? Why did she file a police report? Why did she spend her final months moving the real assets where Derek could never find them?" Derek's mask finally cracked. Rage poured through, pure and ugly. "You have no idea what it's like, growing up with nothing while Mom built her empire. She gave you everything, treated you like royalty. In her blood, and she treated me like an employee at her company. She gave you a job, a salary, opportunities," I said quietly. "She put you through college debt-free. She helped with your wedding. She bought you and Courtney your first house. How much was enough? It was never mine," Derek shouted, standing up. "Everything was always on her terms, her conditions, her approval. She controlled everything. I took that money because it should have been mine from the beginning. She owed me." Courtney grabbed Derek's arm harder. "Stop talking, you idiot." But Derek could not stop. The words flooded out, years of resentment finally finding voice. "Do you want to know why Amber never calls you? Why she doesn't visit? Courtney's been telling her for 5 years that you're a bitter old man who resents her success, that you called her spoiled and entitled. We poisoned her against you because we needed her loyal to us, not you." The words hit like a physical blow. Amber, my sweet granddaughter, who used to beg to spend weekends with us, who Margaret and I adored. They had deliberately destroyed our relationship with her to serve their own agenda. Mom was dying, Derek continued, his voice breaking with emotion. And she still worried more about protecting you than helping her own son. I needed that money. We have debts, serious debts. Courtney's family cut her off. My business investments all failed. We're drowning, and Mom could have saved us. But instead she hoarded her wealth like some dragon. One of the lawyers tried again. Mr. Thompson, please stop talking. Anything you say can be used against you. Derek spun on him. Against me? My own father is threatening me. After everything I've been through, I stood up slowly. Stuart helped you access those accounts. You promised him 20% of the inheritance. But there's something else, isn't there? Something even worse. Derek's expression shifted to defiance, mixed with something darker. Guilt, perhaps. The dementia medication you gave Margaret in her final months. I continued, pieces falling into place as I spoke. The pills you said would help with the confusion caused by her pain medication. What were they really? Courtney stood abruptly. We're leaving. Derek, we're leaving right now. But Derek seemed unable to stop the confession pouring out of him. They were placebos. Expensive placebos that looked like real medication. I needed her confused enough not to notice the transfers, but healthy enough that she wouldn't change her will too drastically. Stuart researched them. They were harmless, just sugar pills. The room went silent. The two lawyers both stood this time, grabbing their briefcases. We're withdrawing from this case immediately. Mr. Thompson, you need criminal defense counsel, not estate attorneys. We cannot be part of this. They left quickly, practically running from the house. I stared at my son, this stranger wearing Derek's face. You kept your dying mother confused and disoriented on purpose. You manipulated her medication while she was fighting cancer. Do you understand what you've done? I didn't hurt her, Derek said, but his voice held no conviction. The pills were harmless. The cancer was killing her anyway. I just needed time. Get out of my house, I said, my voice steady despite the rage and heartbreak churning inside me. The police already have copies of everything. Detective Brennan has been building this case for 3 weeks. Courtney's face went white. You're bluffing. Margaret wouldn't have involved the police. She wouldn't do that to her own son. Margaret knew exactly what Derek was, I said. She documented everything because she knew people like you would claim it never happened. Get out, now. Derek stood there, seeming to shrink. That house you're standing in? It's part of the estate. Well, force you out. Well, tie this up in court for years. You'll spend everything on legal fees and end up with nothing. The house is paid off and in my name alone. It always has been. Your mother made sure of that years ago. I moved toward the door, opening it. Leave. Courtney grabbed her purse and stormed out, but Derek lingered. You were always her favorite. You know that? Her illiterate waitress husband who taught her to read. She told that story 1,000,000 times, like you were some hero. I'm her son, and I could never compete with the man who gave her the gift of literacy. How fair is that? Your mother loved you, I said quietly. She gave you every opportunity, but you chose this path. You chose to steal from her while she was dying. That was your choice. Not hers, not mine. Yours. He left without another word, and I closed the door behind them. I stood in the sudden silence, shaking. Then I did something I had not done since Margaret died. I called someone, not an attorney or a detective. I called my oldest friend, Martin, a fellow retired teacher who had known Margaret and me for 30 years. Martin, can you come over? I need someone to talk to. He arrived within 20 minutes, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug. I broke down then. Really broke down, sobbing for everything lost. My wife, my son, my granddaughter, the family I thought I had built. Martin made coffee and listened while I told him everything. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Margaret was brilliant. He finally said, she protected you even after death. And Irvin, I know this hurts, but you did the right thing. Letting Derek get away with this would have destroyed whatever was left of him. Accountability is love, too. Hess still my son, I whispered. I know, and that makes this unbearably hard. But he stopped being the son you raised somewhere along the way. Maybe prison will give him a chance to find that person again. We sat together until dark, two old teachers trying to make sense of how a life could go so wrong. 2 days passed in a fog. I barely ate, barely slept. Martin checked on me daily. Jackson called with updates about the legal proceedings. But mostly I sat alone, looking through photo albums, trying to find the moment when Derek changed. On the third morning, a knock at the door pulled me from my grief. A woman in her 40s stood on the porch, holding a badge. "Mr. Thompson, I'm Detective Sarah Brennan. May I come in?" I recognized the name from Margaret's journal. "Please." She settled into the same chair where Derek had sat days ago, but her presence felt entirely different. Professional, compassionate, focused. "Your wife was a remarkable woman," Sarah said. "I've been working this case for 3 weeks, and I've never seen someone so thorough in documenting a crime. She made our job almost easy. She was always thorough," I said. "In business, in life, in everything." Sarah pulled out a tablet and opened several files. "I need to update you on where we are. Stuart disappeared to Costa Rica 3 days before Margaret died. We've been coordinating with international authorities for extradition. But Stuart's ex-wife, Patricia, contacted us yesterday. Out of spite, primarily. Stuart left her for a younger woman, and Patricia wanted revenge. What did she give you?" "Stuart's personal laptop. He left it at their house. Thought she wouldn't know how to access it. But Patricia is an IT specialist. She cracked his password in about 10 minutes and found everything. Emails, financial records, chat logs. And what we found changes everything." Sarah turned the tablet to show me an email chain. The first message was from 4 years ago, before Derek and Courtney were even married. The sender was Courtney. The recipient was Stuart. Subject: business opportunity. Sarah read aloud. "I've identified a potential asset acquisition situation. Subject is male, early 30s, emotionally vulnerable, estranged relationship with wealthy mother. Mother has extensive real estate holdings and investment portfolio estimated at $35 to $40 million. Subject is unaware of full extent of mother's wealth. I'm initiating personal relationship with subject. Will need financial expertise within 18 to 24 months. Compensation would be substantial. Are you interested?" I felt cold spread through my chest. She planned this from the beginning. "We believe so." Courtney's background is fascinating. Grew up extremely wealthy in Connecticut. Father was a hedge fund manager. When she was 25, her father made catastrophic investment decisions and lost everything. Family fortune gone in a matter of months. Her parents divorced. Both had to file bankruptcy. Courtney had been living a luxury lifestyle. Designer clothes, expensive cars, exclusive clubs. Suddenly she had nothing. Sarah swiped to another file. She's been married before. Briefly, at 27, to a man named Harold Perkins, 73 years old, wealthy. He died 8 months into the marriage. Heart attack, ruled natural causes. But Harold's children contested the will, claimed Courtney had manipulated their father. They couldn't prove it, but Courtney got nothing from the estate. Then she targeted Derek. We believe she researched Margaret's business empire, identified Derek as the weak link, and engineered their meeting. The coffee shop where they supposedly met by chance. Courtney had been going there for 3 weeks, always at the same time. Derek stopped for his morning coffee. She studied his patterns and manufactured the encounter. Sarah showed me more emails between Courtney and Stuart. She's the one who suggested the theft strategy. She researched the fake dementia medication. She even suggested dosage and timing. Derek was following her script the entire time. Does Derek know? That's where it gets interesting. Sarah pulled up another email. This one, more recent, from 2 years after their marriage. Courtney to Stuart. Derek is more useful than I anticipated. His resentment toward his mother is genuine and deep. I barely have to manipulate him anymore. Has convinced himself that stealing from her is justified. The guilt I expected hasn't materialized. This makes the long game easier. Stuart's response. What about after? Once the mother dies and assets are distributed? Courtney. Derek will have served his purpose. I've already consulted a divorce attorney about asset division. Once the inheritance clears, he'll file. Half in the divorce, then him gone. You and I split 3 ways with our third party. Derek gets enough to survive and won't be able to touch us. Third party? I asked. Sarah nodded grimly. There's someone else involved. We're still identifying them. But Courtney was planning to betray Derek from the start. He thought they were partners. He thought she loved him, but to her, he was just a tool to access Margaret's money. I thought about Derek's rage during our confrontation, his genuine anguish. He had been used, manipulated, turned against his own mother by someone who saw him as nothing more than a pathway to wealth. It did not excuse what Derek did. He still made choices. He still stole from his dying mother. But understanding that Courtney had orchestrated everything added another layer of tragedy to an already devastating situation. There's more, Sarah said, her expression growing even more serious. We found receipts on Courtney's credit card from 2 years ago. Purchases from chemical supply companies. Substances that, while legal to purchase, are known to suppress immune function when administered over time. My blood went cold. You think she poisoned Margaret? We can't prove it. Cancer is complicated, and Margaret's type of pancreatic cancer is aggressive on its own. But the medical examiner reviewed her records and found some anomalies. Margaret's immune markers were unusually low in the months before her diagnosis, lower than her age and health would suggest, and there are chemical signatures in her final blood work consistent with low-level exposure to immunosuppressants. Could that have caused the cancer? No. But it might have accelerated its progression, might have prevented her body from fighting it effectively. The examiner says, well, never know for certain. Cancer doesn't come with a clear cause and effect timeline, but the circumstantial evidence is troubling. I felt rage building, pure and hot. She killed my wife. We can't charge her with murder. The evidence isn't strong enough, but we have solid cases for fraud, elder abuse, forgery, conspiracy, and attempted insurance fraud. Insurance fraud. Sarah pulled up another document. Courtney took out a $2 million life insurance policy on Margaret 18 months ago, forged Margaret's signature on the application, named herself as beneficiary through a shell company. The insurance company flagged it as suspicious after Margaret died, but they would have paid out if we hadn't intervened. Margaret would have been dead, and Courtney would have collected $2 million on top of the inheritance she planned to steal. I could not speak. The scope of Courtney's conspiracy was breathtaking. She had not just stolen money. She had systematically plotted to destroy my wife, possibly accelerated her death, and manipulated my son into being her accomplice. When will you arrest them? I finally asked. Soon. We're finalizing the arrest warrants now. Stewart has agreed to testify against both of them in exchange for a reduced sentence. His attorney knows he has no other option. We have emails, financial records, surveillance footage, testimony from multiple witnesses. This is an airtight case. What will happen to Derek? Sarah's expression softened. That depends on his cooperation. If he testifies against Courtney, if he shows genuine remorse, the prosecutor might offer a reduced sentence, 10 to 15 years instead of 20 to 30. But prison time is inevitable. What he did isn't something a judge can overlook. After Sarah left, I sat in Margaret's study, surrounded by her books and business journals. I thought about the woman I married, the scared 19-year-old waitress who hid her illiteracy from everyone. She had been so ashamed, so convinced she was worthless because she could not read. I met her at a diner where I stopped for lunch between teaching summer school classes. She pretended to look at the menu but kept glancing at other tables to see what food looked like. I realized she could not read, and instead of judging her, I offered to help. We spent that summer meeting at the library. I taught her phonics, then simple words, then sentences. She learned with a hunger I had never seen before. By fall, she was reading at a 5th grade level. By the next summer, she was reading novels. She worked her way through community college while waitressing full-time, got a business degree, saved every penny. At 23, she opened a small bakery with a loan she barely qualified for. By 30, she had 5 locations. By 40, a regional chain of 32 bakeries. She sold the business at 53 for $28 million and invested the money brilliantly. She built an empire from nothing, driven by the knowledge that she could have remained illiterate, could have stayed trapped in low-wage work, if not for someone believing in her enough to teach her. And now I understood what Margaret was doing with the foundation she created. She was not just protecting money. She was creating a legacy that honored our story, that would help thousands of people trapped like she had been. Derek wanted $40 million to pay gambling debts and fund a luxury lifestyle. Margaret left $63 million to change lives. The difference between those two visions was the difference between who my son had become and who my wife always was. 3 days later, I woke to the sound of sirens. Multiple police cars, their lights flashing red and blue in the pre-dawn darkness. I looked out my bedroom window and saw them surrounding Derek and Courtney's house 4 blocks away. Detective Sarah had told me it would happen this morning, but seeing it was different than knowing it would occur. I got dressed and made coffee, hands shaking. By 6 in the morning, my doorbell rang. I expected Sarah. Instead, I found Amber standing on my porch. She looked so much like Margaret, the same determined eyes, the same set to her jaw when she was upset. 21 years old now, studying law at Georgetown. I had not seen her since she was 16. "Grandpa," she said, and burst into tears. I pulled her inside, held her while she sobbed. When she finally calmed enough to speak, she said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I let you think I believed their lies." "What do you mean?" She wiped her eyes and followed me to the kitchen. Over coffee, she told me her story. "When I turned 18, I started noticing things. Inconsistencies in what Mom and Dad said about you and Grandma. They claimed you were bitter and cruel, but that didn't match the memories I had from when I was little. You were always kind to me, patient, loving. So I started questioning their stories." "When did you reach out to Margaret?" 3 years ago. I found Grandma on social media and sent her a private message, asked if we could meet without my parents knowing. She agreed immediately. We met at a coffee shop downtown, and Grandpa, she cried when she saw me. She said she thought Shed lost me forever. Tears filled my eyes. Margaret never told me. She carried that joy in secret alone. We met once a month for 3 years. Amber continued. Grandma told me everything. About Dad stealing from her, about Mom's manipulation, about the foundation she was building. She showed me evidence, explained her plans. She made me promise not to confront my parents, said it wasn't safe, that they might try to manipulate me further or cut me off financially before I finished school. Why didn't she tell me you were back in her life? She wanted to, but she was protecting me. If you knew, you might have let something slip. Dad watches everything, monitors everything. Grandma said the best way to keep me safe was to let everyone think the estrangement was real. Amber pulled an envelope from her purse. Grandma gave me this 6 months ago. She said to give it to you after the arrests, when it was finally safe. Inside was another USB drive and a handwritten note in Margaret's handwriting. My dearest Irvin, if you're reading this, Amber has come back to you. She never really left. She's been my secret joy these past 3 years, meeting with me, helping me gather evidence, giving me hope that not everything was lost. She's so much like you, full of integrity and strength. The USB drive contains another message I want you to see. I love you both. Margaret. Amber set up her laptop and plugged in the drive. Margaret appeared on screen again, but this recording was different. She looked healthier, stronger. It must have been from months before she died. Irvin, my love, Margaret said, smiling at the camera. If you're watching this, it means Amber has revealed our secret. I'm sorry I kept it from you, but I needed to protect her. Now I need to tell you about the real inheritance, the one Derek will never touch. She explained the Irvin and Margaret Foundation for Family Literacy, how she had been building it for 5 years, quietly setting aside assets in a trust structure Derek knew nothing about. The foundation was already operational, already helping families. I built this from our story, Margaret said on the video. Remember when we met? I was 19 years old. working double shifts at that diner, pretending I could read the menu. I was so ashamed, Irvin. Illiteracy felt like this terrible secret I had to hide from everyone. And then you walked into my life and offered to help without judging me, without making me feel stupid or broken. Margaret's eyes glistened with tears. You taught me to read, and you gave me dignity. You showed me that not knowing something didn't make me worthless. It just meant I hadn't learned it yet. That one shift in perspective changed my entire life. I went from being a scared waitress hiding her illiteracy to building a business empire, all because you believed in me. She leaned closer to the camera. The foundation will do for thousands of people what you did for me. Well, provide free literacy education for adults, support for families where parents are learning alongside their children, scholarships for kids whose parents never had educational opportunities. The 63 million Derek wanted to steal, it's already working, already changing lives. Margaret's expression grew more serious. Derek can't touch this money. The trust structure requires proof of his theft before you can access the funds. I needed that protection because I knew he'd try to claim everything. But the police reports, the evidence in the safety deposit box, it's all designed to unlock the trust. Jackson knows how to proceed. You're the sole trustee, Irvin. This is our legacy, yours and mine. The video ended with Margaret saying, "I'll wait for you on the other side. Take your time, change some lives first. I love you." Amber and I sat in silence for a long moment. Then she said, "I've already been accepted to a summer internship with the State Attorney General's office, Elder Abuse Division. Grandma made me promise I'd use my law degree to help people in situations like hers. She was so proud of you," I said. "I know. She told me all the time." Amber's voice cracked. "I wanted to come to the funeral, but Dad was watching me so closely. He tracked my phone, monitored my social media. I was afraid if I came, he'd realize I'd been in contact with Grandma, and it might compromise her legal case. So I stayed away, and it killed me, Grandpa. I wanted to say goodbye. You said goodbye over 3 years of coffee shop meetings. You gave her something precious, Amber. You gave her hope that the next generation wasn't lost." We spent the rest of the morning looking through photo albums. Amber had stories I had never heard, moments from her meetings with Margaret. They had talked about everything: law school, relationships, Margaret's business strategies, books they both loved. "Did Grandma ever tell you about her stealth badass phase?" Amber asked, laughing through tears. "What? About 6 months before she died, she started texting me memes about grandmas being underestimated. She called herself a stealth badass because she was building this entire legal case against Dad while everyone thought she was just a sick old woman. Shed. Send me pictures of herself in her chemo scarf with captions like, 'Still fighting,' and 'Underestimate me at your own risk.'" I laughed, imagining Margaret's defiance even in her weakest moments. "She also told me to tell you something," Amber said, growing serious. "She said that grief would try to convince you that her death was the end of your story. But she wanted you to know it's actually a new chapter. She said you spent 40 years supporting her dreams, and now it was time for you to dream again. The foundation is just the beginning." We talked until afternoon, reconnecting, rebuilding what Derek and Courtney had tried to destroy. Amber told me about her boyfriend, a public defender named Philip who shared her passion for helping vulnerable people. She showed me pictures of them together, and I saw genuine happiness in her eyes. "I want you to walk me down the aisle when Philip and I get married," she said. "We're planning for next summer. Grandma knew about him. She gave me her blessing. Now I need yours. You have it," I said, hugging her. "You've always had it." As Amber was leaving, Detective Sarah pulled into the driveway. She looked exhausted but satisfied. "Both in custody," she said. "Derek broke down during questioning. Has agreed to testify against Courtney in exchange for a reduced sentence. The prosecutor is offering 7 years if he cooperates fully. What about Courtney?" "She's not talking," demanded an attorney immediately. "But we don't need her cooperation. Stewart is testifying, Derek is testifying, and the evidence is overwhelming. Her trial will probably start in about 8 months." Sarah noticed Amber and smiled. "You must be the granddaughter." Your grandmother talked about you constantly. She was so proud that you were back in her life. You knew?" I asked. Margaret told me everything. She needed someone to know the full story in case something happened to her before the case was complete. I've been protecting Amber's secret along with everything else. After they both left, I sat alone in the quiet house. But it felt different now. Not empty, but full of possibility. Margaret had not just left me money. She had left me purpose, family, and a roadmap for moving forward. I called Jackson to discuss the foundation's operations. He walked me through the trust documents, explaining how the funds were structured and what my responsibilities would be as sole trustee. Margaret was brilliant, Jackson said. She created a self-sustaining organization with built-in oversight and accountability. You can't just spend the money frivolously. Every expenditure has to serve the foundation's mission. She protected the money from everyone, even you. That sounds like Margaret. She trusted me but believed in systems. The foundation has already helped over 400 families in its first year. Margaret had it running before she died, working with established literacy organizations, funding proven programs. You're not starting from scratch. You're stepping into something already making a difference. That night, I wrote in the journal I had started keeping after Margaret's death. Year 2 without her begins tomorrow. I thought losing her was the end of everything. But she planned for this, prepared for this. She knew I would need purpose to survive the grief. The foundation isn't just about honoring her memory. It's about continuing the work we started together 43 years ago when I taught a scared waitress to read. Some love stories don't end with death. Some love stories become legacies. 8 months later, I sat in a courtroom watching Courtney's trial begin. Amber sat beside me, taking detailed notes for her law school classes. Detective Sarah sat in the front row. Jackson was there too, along with Margaret's former business partners and employees who wanted to see justice done. Courtney looked different. Prison had stripped away the polished veneer she always wore. No expensive clothes, no perfectly styled hair, no jewelry, just a woman in a jail uniform, eyes cold and calculating, scanning the courtroom like she was looking for weaknesses to exploit. The prosecutor, Daniel Hayes, was a man in his 50s with a reputation for thorough preparation and compelling presentations. He spent the first 2 days laying out the evidence methodically. Bank statements, forged documents, email trails, surveillance footage, each piece building on the last, creating an inescapable picture of systematic fraud. But the most damaging testimony came from Derek. My son looked broken as he took the stand. Prison had aged him. He had lost weight, his skin looked gray, and his hands shook as he was sworn in. Part of me still hurt seeing him like this. He was still my son, still the boy I raised, even though he had become someone I did not recognize. Daniel asked Derek to explain how the scheme began. Derek's voice was barely audible. I was angry at my mother. I felt overlooked my whole life. She built this incredible business empire, but I never felt like I was part of it. I worked for her company for 10 years, and she always treated me like just another employee. I wanted recognition, wanted her to see me as more than just her son. When did Courtney enter the picture? We met 5 years ago at a coffee shop downtown. I thought it was random, but I learned later she had been going there for weeks, timing her visits to when I showed up. She researched my routine and manufactured the meeting. What happened after you started dating? Derek took a shaky breath. She was perfect at first. Beautiful, charming, interested in everything I said. She listened to me complain about my mother, about feeling unappreciated. She made me feel understood. Within 6 months, we were engaged. When did she suggest stealing from your mother? About a year after we married. She started slowly, suggesting that Mom owed me more than she was giving. She'd say things like, "Your inheritance is just sitting there doing nothing. Why shouldn't you access it now when you need it?" She made it sound reasonable, like taking an advance on money that would eventually be mine anyway. Did you know she was planning to leave you? Derek's face crumpled. No, I found out in jail. From the emails the police showed me. She had been having an affair with Stewart for 2 years. They were planning to take the money and disappear together. I was just a tool to her. a pathway to my mother's wealth. I thought she loved me. I thought we were partners. Tell the court about the medication you gave your mother. This was the hardest part. Derek wept openly as he spoke. Courtney researched it. She said the pills would make Mom confused enough that she wouldn't notice missing money, but not so confused that she'd change her will drastically. Courtney gave me the pills, told me the dosage, told me when to administer them. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know she might have been poisoning Mom too. Did you ever suspect Courtney was capable of murder? Not until the detectives showed me the chemical purchase receipts. Then I understood what she really was. A sociopath who saw my family as marks to exploit. I was just as much her victim as my mother was. The defense attorney objected, but the damage was done. The jury saw Derek's genuine horror at understanding the full scope of Courtney's manipulation. Over the next week, more witnesses testified. Stewart, extradited from Costa Rica, described how Courtney seduced him and promised him millions. Patricia, Stewart's ex-wife, testified about Courtney's calculated planning. The forensic psychologist explained coercive control in relationships and how Courtney used classic manipulation techniques to bend Derek to her will. The medical examiner testified about the chemical markers in Margaret's blood work. While he could not definitively prove Courtney caused the cancer, he showed how the substances Courtney purchased could have suppressed Margaret's immune system, making it harder for her body to fight the disease. The insurance investigator detailed the forged life insurance policy. $2 million Courtney would have collected if Margaret's death had not triggered a fraud investigation. Margaret's handwriting expert showed conclusive proof of forgery on multiple documents, signatures that looked similar to Margaret's, but failed under microscopic analysis and digital enhancement. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I attended every day, watching justice unfold slowly but inexorably. Amber came when her class schedule allowed. Sarah stopped by regularly to check on us. The defense tried to paint Courtney as a victim, too, corrupted by Derek's influence, suffering in an abusive relationship. But the evidence of her predatory pattern across multiple relationships undermined that narrative. The jury saw her for what she was, a calculating predator who targeted vulnerable families and destroyed lives without remorse. Closing arguments came on a Tuesday morning. Daniel summarized the evidence with devastating clarity. Courtney Thompson researched, planned, and executed a sophisticated fraud scheme spanning 4 years. She manipulated Derek Thompson into betraying his dying mother. She forged documents, stole hundreds of thousands of dollars, and likely poisoned Margaret Thompson to accelerate her death. She shows no remorse, no recognition of the harm she caused. She saw a wealthy family and decided to destroy them for profit. The defense attorney argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that Courtney had been dragged into Derek's scheme, that reasonable doubt existed, but her words lacked conviction. The evidence was too strong. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On Thursday afternoon, they returned with a verdict. Guilty on all counts: fraud, forgery, elder abuse, conspiracy, attempted insurance fraud. Courtney showed no emotion as the verdict was read. She sat perfectly still, staring straight ahead, her face a mask. But as the judge dismissed the jury, Courtney turned and looked directly at me. She mouthed silently, "You took everything from me." I stared back calmly, thinking, "No, you took everything from yourself." Sentencing came 3 weeks later. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Patricia Morrison, had read every document, reviewed every piece of evidence. Her sentencing statement was thorough and damning. "Mrs. Thompson, you executed one of the most calculated and cruel fraud schemes this court has seen. You targeted a dying woman, manipulated her son, forged documents, likely poisoned your victim, and showed no remorse when caught. Your actions demonstrate a complete lack of empathy or moral compass. The court sentences you to 26 years in federal prison without possibility of parole for 15 years. Courtney was led away in handcuffs, still showing no emotion. Outside the courthouse, media surrounded us. Cameras, microphones, reporters shouting questions. Sarah and Jackson had prepared me for this. I made a brief statement, My wife, Margaret, was a remarkable woman who built something beautiful from nothing. She protected her family even in death. Justice has been served. Now we honor her legacy by helping others. A reporter asked about Derek. I paused, choosing my words carefully. My son made terrible choices. He'll face consequences, but I hope he finds redemption. That's what Margaret would have wanted, Amber added. My grandmother taught me that accountability and compassion can coexist. We're disappointed but not destroyed. We're moving forward. We walked away from the cameras, from the courthouse, from that chapter of our lives. Detective Sarah caught up with us in the parking lot. Your wife would be proud of how you handled this. She planned everything perfectly, even from beyond the grave. She protected me one last time, I said. Now I need to honor that protection by living well. Derek's sentencing happened the following month. 7 years in federal prison, as promised, in exchange for his cooperation. I did not attend. Amber went and reported back that Derek had read a statement apologizing to the family, to Margaret's memory, to me. Whether he meant it or was simply performing contrition, I could not know. He asked about you, Amber said. Asked if you'd ever consider visiting him in prison. Maybe someday, I replied, when the anger is fully faded. Right now, I need to focus on living, not on managing the damage he caused. Grandma would understand that. Yes, I agreed. She would. 1 year after Courtney's conviction, I stood in front of a new building downtown, watching 200 people gather for the grand opening of the Ervin and Margaret Foundation for Family Literacy. The building was beautiful, modern but warm, with large windows and bright spaces designed to feel welcoming rather than institutional. Amber stood beside me, now graduated from law school and working as a victim advocate for the state attorney general's office. She had specialized in elder abuse law, as Margaret had hoped. Philip, her fiancé, was there too, a kind man who reminded me of myself at his age, passionate about justice and helping people. The ceremony began with Amber giving the introduction. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying across the crowd. My grandmother, Margaret Thompson, was 19 years old when she realized her inability to read was holding her back from the life she wanted. She was working as a waitress, hiding her illiteracy from everyone, convinced she was worthless. Then she met my grandfather, Irvin, a young teacher who offered to help without judgment. He taught her to read, and in doing so, gave her dignity and possibility. Amber smiled at me. Grandma always said that one person believing in you can change your entire life trajectory. Grandpa believed in her, and she built an empire. She never forgot where she came from, or what it felt like to be trapped by illiteracy. This foundation is her way of giving back, of helping thousands of people experience the same transformation she did. The crowd applauded. I took the podium, my hands only slightly shaking. Public speaking had never been comfortable for me, but this mattered too much to let fear stop me. Margaret and I met 43 years ago at a diner. I began. She couldn't read the menu, tried to hide it by watching what other people ordered. I recognized what she was doing because I had taught literacy classes before. I offered to help, and she was terrified I would judge her. But I didn't. I saw a young woman who was intelligent and motivated but had simply never been given the educational opportunities she deserved. I told our story. How Margaret learned to read over that summer. How she got her GED, then her community college degree, then opened her first bakery. How she grew that single location into a regional chain of 32 stores. How she invested her profits wisely and built a fortune worth $63 million. But Margaret never forgot what it felt like to be illiterate, I continued. She understood the shame, the fear, the sense of being trapped. So 5 years ago, she started building this foundation in secret. She wanted to help families the way I helped her. She wanted to break cycles of poverty and limited opportunity by providing free literacy education, family learning programs, and scholarships for children whose parents never had educational opportunities. I explained the foundation's first year. Over 400 families served. Adults learning to read while their children received tutoring and mentorship. Job training combined with literacy education. Partnerships with community colleges and workforce development programs. Already we had seen remarkable success stories. Today, we're expanding. This building will serve as our flagship learning center. We're also opening satellite locations in 12 cities across the country. Margaret's vision is growing beyond what even she imagined. I introduced the first scholarship recipients. Janet, a single mother of 32, stood nervously beside her 8-year-old daughter, Grace. Janet had been illiterate her entire life, working minimum-wage jobs, struggling to help Grace with homework. The Foundation's program changed everything. Janet spoke briefly, her voice shaking with emotion. I spent my whole life ashamed that I couldn't read. I hid it from everyone, including my daughter. The Irvin and Margaret Foundation didn't just teach me to read. They gave me dignity. They showed me I wasn't stupid or lazy. I just hadn't been taught. Now, I'm reading with Grace every night. We're learning together. This foundation saved my life. Grace read a thank you letter she had written. Her clear, confident voice brought tears to many eyes, including mine. Dear Mr. Thompson, thank you for helping my mom. She's happier now. She reads to me every night. We're going to the library every week. My mom says your wife was like her when she was young. I want to be like your wife when I grow up, strong and smart and kind. Thank you for giving my mom a chance. I cut the ribbon on the new learning center, and we toured the facilities. Bright classrooms with comfortable seating, a computer lab with the latest technology, a children's library with thousands of books, adult learning spaces designed to feel supportive rather than remedial. Everything Margaret had envisioned, now real and operational. The reception afterward filled the building with energy and hope. The mayor attended, praising the foundation and promising city funding support. Education nonprofits wanted partnerships. Local businesses offered volunteer hours and donations. Media coverage was extensive and positive. Donations poured in. Margaret's story resonated with people. The idea of a woman overcoming illiteracy to build an empire, then using that empire to help others in the same situation, captured imaginations and opened wallets. Within a month of the grand opening, we had enough funding to add 3 more city locations. As the crowd thinned, I found a quiet bench outside the building. Amber joined me, both of us tired but satisfied. I went to see Dad last week, she said quietly. I had been wondering when she would tell me. How is he? Different. Prison is hard, but he's dealing with his issues, taking classes, going to therapy, actually confronting why he made the choices he made. He asked about you, asked if you'd ever consider. She trailed off. Maybe someday, I said. The anger is mostly gone now. Mostly I just feel sad about what could have been. That's healthy, Amber said. Grandma wouldn't want you consumed by bitterness. I know. She left me a letter specifically about that. She said, don't let their choices steal your joy. Joy is the ultimate rebellion against bitterness. Amber smiled. That sounds like her. She was wise about things like that. Speaking of which, you mentioned Philip wanted to talk to me about something. Amber's face lit up. We're engaged. Officially. Hes going to ask you for my hand, old-fashioned style. But I wanted to tell you first. We want you to walk me down the aisle next summer. Tears filled my eyes. Your grandmother would be so proud. She told me once that she worried about you, about whether you'd find someone genuine in a world full of people like Courtney. But she would have loved Philip. She did love him. I introduced them about a year before she died. She gave us her blessing then, made me promise I'd invite you to the wedding. She knew you'd be here, Grandpa. She knew we'd get through this together. That evening, I returned home. The house felt different now, not empty but full of purpose. I had spent the past year transforming grief into action, turning Margaret's death into a legacy that would outlive both of us. I opened the photo album that contained our wedding pictures, Margaret in her simple dress, me in a borrowed suit, both of us ridiculously young and happy. We had no money, no prospects, just love and belief in each other. From that beginning, we built 41 years of partnership. I found Margaret's final letter and read it again. One line always stood out. Don't let their choices steal your joy. Joy is the ultimate rebellion against bitterness. She was right. Derek and Courtney had tried to destroy everything Margaret built. They failed because Margaret was smarter, more strategic, and more committed to protecting what mattered. She turned their theft into opportunity, their betrayal into justice, her death into a living legacy. I had spent my career teaching high school English, helping teenagers discover the power of stories and language. I never made much money, never built an empire, but I changed lives in ways that mattered. I taught Margaret to read, and she changed the world. That was its own kind of wealth. The Foundation's website showed 83 new applications this week. Families desperate for help, adults ashamed of their illiteracy, children who wanted their parents to read to them. I approved funding for 15 more scholarships, knowing Margaret would have done the same. Before bed, I stood in Margaret's study, preserved exactly as she left it. Her books lined the shelves. Her reading glasses sat on the desk. Her favorite pen rested in its holder. I spoke aloud, as I did most nights. We did it, Maggie. We're changing lives. Derek tried to steal your legacy, but you hid it where thieves can't reach. In purpose, in service, in love. Courtney wanted your money, but what she got was justice. They both thought they were smarter than you. They learned otherwise. Peace settled over me. Not the absence of pain, but something better, the presence of meaning. Margaret's death had broken me, but her planning rebuilt me into something stronger. She knew grief could either consume me or transform me. She chose transformation for me, built the pathway forward before I even knew I would need it. I thought about Derek in prison, hopefully learning, hopefully growing. I thought about Courtney, locked away for decades, unable to hurt anyone else. I thought about Amber, brilliant and compassionate, building a career helping vulnerable people. I thought about the 400 families whose lives had changed because Margaret refused to let betrayal have the final word. True wealth, I realized, is not measured in bank accounts. It is measured in lives touched, in purposes served, in love that transcends death. Derek and Courtney wanted $40 million. They got prison sentences and destroyed reputations. I received something they could never understand. The joy of honoring a love that death could not end and betrayal could not diminish. Margaret taught me one final lesson through all of this. The best way to defeat people who try to steal your joy is to give that joy away freely to those who need it most. Revenge is hollow, but purpose is eternal. I slept well that night, dreaming of Margaret reading in her favorite chair, smiling at me over the top of her book. The next morning brought new applications to the Foundation, new families seeking help, new opportunities to honor Margaret's vision. I got to work. Life continues. Love endures. And sometimes, the greatest victories come not from fighting back with anger, but from refusing to let bitterness win. Margaret knew that. She lived it. She taught it to me. Now I pass it forward to everyone who walks through the doors of the Irvin and Margaret Foundation for Family Literacy. We teach reading, yes, but more than that. We teach dignity. We teach possibility. We teach that one person believing in you can change everything. Margaret believed in me 43 years ago. I believe in her still, and together, even with her gone, we continue changing the world, one reader at a time. That is the legacy betrayal could not touch. That is the inheritance worth more than any amount of money. That is what Margaret truly left me, and what I will protect and expand for the rest of my life. Justice was served, love prevailed, and in the end, the thieves got exactly what they deserved. Nothing of value, and everything they feared. Margaret would call that poetic justice. I call it her final gift to me. The gift of purpose that turns grief into hope and loss into legacy. And so I move forward, not alone, but surrounded by the family Margaret protected, the mission she created, and the love that death itself could not diminish. This is how you honor someone. Not with tears alone, but with action. Not with grief alone, but with purpose. Not with endings, but with new beginnings that carry forward everything they believed in. Margaret taught me to live well. Even in death, she continues teaching me. And I will be her student, her partner, her legacy bearer, for however many years I have left. That is my promise to her. That is my gift to myself. That is the true inheritance she left, worth infinitely more than $40 million, or $63 million, or any amount that can be counted. Some things cannot be stolen. Some legacies cannot be destroyed. Some love stories never end. This is ours. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever faced a moment when someone you trusted betrayed you? How did you choose to respond? Did you let bitterness consume you, or did you find a way to transform that pain into something meaningful? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel for more stories about resilience, justice, and the power of choosing purpose over revenge. Share this video with someone who might need to hear Margaret's message today. That betrayal does not have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of something even more powerful. Thank you for listening to Margaret's story and to mine. May you find the strength to turn your own pain into purpose, your own losses into legacies. May you always choose joy over bitterness, meaning over revenge, and love over everything else. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.